Something very big and possibly very serious is changing in America right now. And it seems like nobody is talking about it, at least not in a cohesive way, connecting the dots. If you didn't know, there's been a major overhaul in personnel recently within our government. It's almost like we got regime change before Iran did. At least four very prominent figures in our government have left their positions, all within the past few weeks, actually. Christy Gnome got ousted, Joe Kent resigned, Pam Bondi got fired, and just very recently, this man by the name of Randy George, the chief of staff of the U.S. Army, was purged, along with a bunch of other generals, actually. And this is strange. This is bizarre. You don't typically see this many prominent figures in this short of a time frame all leave the administration. And what's interesting is that it's not like all of this happened at once on a single day. It's almost like the government and the media drip fed us this information, one by one, and trying to portray these as separate, disconnected events. And like I talked about in a previous video, this kind of slow drip of information is a pretty clear sign of some kind of psychological operation or psyop going on. And this possibly goes way deeper than you might even think. So in this video, I'm going to talk briefly about those four people I just mentioned, along with one bonus person at the end that you definitely won't be expecting, so be sure to watch until then. And the point in all this really ties back into how it's really starting to feel more and more like our world is a stage. And right now, on this stage, the props are being arranged in such a way to prepare us for something huge that's about to go down in the near future. The first major firing was that of Christy Gnome, the Secretary of Homeland Security. Basically, she was just the person who oversaw all of the immigration policies. And obviously, this is one of the more important positions in the administration. It's literally Homeland Security, probably just one level below something like Secretary of State. It happened just about a month ago from the time of me filming this, and there was no official reason given as to why exactly she was fired, but apparently, according to some sources, it was just because of all of the mismanagement and scandals surrounding her, and at some point, her image just became too big of a liability, even for this administration. And that honestly kind of makes sense, it checks out, and if it were just this and nothing else happening recently, there would probably be no further questions. It's just a pretty standard case of a bad employee being fired. But you know what's the strange part in all of this? One day, suddenly, just out of nowhere, it's leaked to the press that there's some kind of bizarre, embarrassing scandal involving her husband. Doing some really weird stuff, let's just put it that way. You can see it for yourself, I'm not going to comment on it too much, gotta keep the video PG. But tell me, is it just me? Or does it feel like there's some part of this at least, where certain people behind the scenes are maybe trying to punish or even humiliate her on her way out? In fact, isn't that what happened to Elon Musk on his way out? Not going to comment too much on that, maybe that's a topic for the Patreon. But if you know about that whole thing, you know. That's all I'm going to say here. Anyways, this case in and of itself of Christy Gnome, again, might not be anything other than just a bad employee being fired for mismanagement and scandals. It might not necessarily be revealing of anything deeper going on in and of itself. If it were the only case of a major government official being fired recently, but it's not. We still have a bunch more to get to. The next strange situation was Joe Kent, and I think this is the one that made the most headlines. He was the acting director of national counterterrorism, and he recently resigned over the war in Iran. In fact, he gave a formal message, basically saying that this war was not in the interests of the United States and that we were dragged into it on behalf of a certain country in the Middle East. And he indicated that he didn't want to support the administration anymore because it had essentially been captured and infiltrated by our greatest ally. And this is an interesting case because, on the surface, it does seem like a really brave and heroic thing to do for Joe Kent, so props to him. It seems like he had a good conscience, knew what was going on, and decided to do something about this crazy situation and is trying to let everyone know the truth. But at the same time, I do have to say this, or else I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job, that if this resignation did happen to be part of some kind of psyop or something deeper going on, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. And I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention to you some of the unique things about this guy, Joe Kent's background. Like the fact that he literally used to work for the CIA. And you know what they say about intelligence officers, there's really no such thing as a former CIA agent. Also, if you just look a little bit deeper, you'll find that Joe Kent, as a politician, one of his main financial backers, I think possibly his biggest donor, happens to be none other than. Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the video. If you didn't know, I have a full bonus show over on Patreon that's actually a bit different from this channel. I drop videos on there every single week, specifically to talk about things that I can't really talk about on here. I'm sure you guys understand that there are so many more things I want to say, but there are some things that you just can't say on a mainstream platform like this. But on there, I'm completely unfiltered, completely uncensored, completely off script, and I'll be reacting to everything going on in the world and covering some much deeper and much more controversial topics. So I think it's something that you guys would really enjoy. You might even like it more than this main channel. It's $5 a month and you'll get access to the full weekly show. Link is in the description and pinned comment. And shout out to everyone who's already on Patreon and everyone who's a channel member as well. Love and appreciate you guys. One of his main financial backers, I think possibly his biggest donor, happens to be none other than the infamous Peter Thiel. I feel like most of you guys know who Peter Thiel is by now. If you don't, I actually have a previous members only video on the channel that you can check out if you'd like and get caught up to speed. But long story short, he's basically the scariest and most dystopian person in the entire world. And again, he has been one of Joe Kent's major donors behind the scenes in politics for a while now. Now, one more thing about this whole Joe Kent situation is that he went on Tucker Carlson's show and had a full-length interview published literally the next day after he resigned. I don't think even 24 hours passed before he was getting millions of views on YouTube. Almost as if all of this was carefully coordinated and planned out beforehand in some way. In fact, logically, it just had to have been. For a high-profile, high-production interview on a major outlet like Tucker Carlson's network, it takes days, possibly even up to a week, to set up, produce, and publish, start to finish. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if that interview was fully filmed and prepared way before the news of Joe Kent's resignation and that big announcement. There's no possible way that it wasn't carefully planned out. And also, if you didn't know, Tucker Carlson himself has very deep connections to the CIA as well. And his father was actually the founder of VOA. Again, if you know, you know. But it was a major CIA op back in the day. And by the way, I do want to make it fully clear that I actually like Tucker, and this is nothing against him. I watch his show from time to time, I learn a lot from it. He has interesting perspectives. So this is not like a shot at Tucker Carlson. I'm only saying this stuff because I feel like it is kind of my responsibility to mention some of these interesting data points because that's what they are. We're all just trying to understand what's going on a little bit better. And I'll be the first to say that I don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. I don't have necessarily a cohesive theory just yet. But as people, as a society living in these crazy times, we need to start paying more attention to these kinds of things and maybe drawing our own conclusions about them. And also, it is important to know and keep in mind that a lot of these people that you see in the media and the government, they're not like me and you. They're not just ordinary people trying to get by. These people, by and large, are directly inside the beehive, having direct ties to the government, to the intelligence agencies, even to large financial institutions. So, moral of the story, it's a big club and we ain't in it. And that big club may or may not include Joe Kent and, by extension, Tucker Carlson. The next shoe to drop was Pam Bondi, and I feel like most people know who she is. Famously, she was the Attorney General in the Trump administration who presided over the whole Epstein Files scandal. And obviously, she came under huge fire for completely botching and mishandling the situation, basically lying about the whole case and trying to cover it up desperately. And it was just a cesspool of incompetence, honestly. So, just like in the Christy Gnome case, if we're looking at this in and of itself, it's no surprise why she was fired. But as always, like it seems nowadays, there's something slightly deeper to the story. In fact, it's really interesting timing because this firing just so happened about 2 weeks before she was scheduled to testify before Congress. Because guess what? Pam Bondi has a deposition scheduled for April 14th. And what do you know? Right before that, conveniently, she's fired. She's out of the government. What a coincidence that the single person in the world who has the most information about the Epstein files just so happens to get totally relieved of her duties in government just a mere 2 weeks before she's set to appear under oath before Congress. Almost as if they're trying to find a way to get her to weasel out of it. It's not like our government would ever do anything dishonest like that, right? Now, there currently is a big effort going on right now to make sure that she still does testify, and obviously we all have to hope that goes through. But either way, is it crazy to think that there's something interesting, something coincidental going on? And again, I want to make the point that if this were an individual case of a firing in and of itself, and she was the only one fired recently, it wouldn't necessarily be that suspicious, but this comes on the heels of Christy Gnome being fired, Joe Kent resigning, and with her, now a third major Trump administration official getting kicked out just within the same few weeks. There's gotta be something going on. Do they really think they can just slip this under our noses without us, the people, realizing that something strange is happening? And by the way, we haven't even gotten to the fourth and possibly most critical one yet. Now, this situation is going under the radar a little bit. Randy George is one of the highest ranking military officials in the entire country. He's literally the chief of staff of the U.S. Army. He's held that position since 2023. And just recently, the reports are in that he was essentially forced to step down and forced to retire by Peter Hegseth. And this is a big deal. It's one of the highest ranking military officials being purged in the middle of one of the most contentious wars in recent history. And by the way, there's also now been reporting of, I believe, 12 other generals or high ranking military officials who have also been fired recently along with him. And what this means, obviously, is that there's likely a huge dispute going on within the chain of command. And what that should tell us is that something big is coming. And that something big is likely going to be a major escalation of the war in Iran. Now, I talk about it in much more detail on my Patreon show. I would highly recommend checking that out. But long story short, I think there's going to be some kind of ground invasion within the next month. And I'm not the only one saying this, by the way. Some are reporting that it might be an operation to take Karg Island. Some are reporting that it might be to take some of the smaller islands near the Strait of Hormuz in order to secure that choke point. And others are even saying that it's going to be on the mainland of Iran to secure the enriched uranium. Now, the reason why they're essentially flooding the zones with the reporting of so many different options and so much ambiguity is obviously to confuse everyone, like the government and media are trying to confuse people on purpose. Our military strategy is to be unpredictable and keep everyone guessing, including the enemy. like just not letting people know the next move. So that's the reason why they're making it confusing and saying, oh, this is going to happen, or that's going to happen, or that's going to happen. But either way, whatever form it ends up taking, just know that a major escalation is coming. Don't count on a ceasefire or something. There is no off ramp to this war in the near future. And instead of listening to the official statements that the government says or the obvious lies that the media promotes, just look at the troop buildup and the movement in the region. I believe we now have about 50,000 troops stationed in theater in the Middle East. And if you've been following the updates, it's like we've been sending in new battalions like every other day. It obviously takes a massive amount of money and resources to sustain that. So it's not like these troops are just getting sent over there for nothing, for a nice vacation in the Middle East. So just even looking at the basics of all this, it becomes pretty obvious that a ground invasion or some kind of major escalation is coming soon. So it becomes kind of clear why this Army Chief of Staff was fired. He probably strongly opposed whatever operation they had planned, and he, with his years of military experience, probably knows that it's either a huge risk or just completely doomed to fail. But like I said, politically, there's just no off-ramp to this conflict. So it looks like Peter Hegseth and the Department of War aren't taking no for an answer in this case, even if it means literally purging your own military command. So anyways, brace yourself. Mark my words, this conflict is going to get even bigger. That's just my analysis of how the firing of this Army Chief of Staff ties into the wider Iran conflict. And as it pertains to the overall topic of this video, this again continues the bizarre trend of major government officials either being fired or resigning within the past few weeks. And whatever is going on behind the scenes, I don't know exactly. Maybe we'll find out in the near future. But it does seem like an indicator of a much bigger shift secretly going on within our government. Now, this is a little bit speculative, but stay with me. The craziest part is that this rearrangement of government order is actually not something that's just happening in the United States. In fact, it seems like other countries and major power players are preparing for something as well. Case in point, China, which is the other main superpower on the world stage. And for better or worse, something interesting is going on there as well. In fact, maybe Hegseth even got the idea from them, because just a few months ago, the Chinese government also got rid of their #1 top-ranked military official, along with some other prominent government officials as well. Now, obviously, it's hard to speculate or come to definitive conclusions. China locks down their information very hard, and obviously, when it comes to trying to do research on China, there's a lot of misinformation and propaganda from Western sources as well. So it's hard to know exactly what's going on, but something is there for sure. Because just logically speaking, when both America and China, definitively the two most powerful countries in the entire world, start getting rid of their own most prominent government and military officials, it's impossible to not think that there's something deeper going on, something likely even transnational. That's the point of me talking about this part. Because is it just me? Or does it feel like the entire global order is about to be shaken up in a significant way? Almost as if there's some kind of developing new script being written right in front of our eyes. And it feels like we're being given just enough information to speculate and know something's going on, but not enough information to draw direct, definitive conclusions. And that's kind of the definition of PSYOP. Again, I wish I knew, but I don't. I have my theories for sure. Some of the more interesting ones I save for my Patreon, because some of these things don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about on a mainstream platform. But if you have any ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments. I love reading them. All I can say, again, is that it feels like there are powerful figures moving in the shadows, and that we're the pawns in the game, or that we're the test subjects of the experiment. or just the going. And so that's why I think it's important to at least try to understand what's going on. So I hope you learned something new from this video, or it at least made you think a little bit deeper. I don't know a great way to end this video, but I do want to say that I hope you can use whatever knowledge you learn, either from this channel or any other channel, to your advantage to improve your own personal life in some way. It's always important to stay vigilant and aware. That's what I try to do in my life, and that's what I'm trying to share with y'all. Because it's always better to try to anticipate things beforehand and see them coming, rather than be completely blindsided by them. And also in all this, amidst all the chaos and psychological warfare going on around us, it's really more important than ever to stay grounded in our beliefs and our values and our faith, to stay connected to our friends and our families and our communities around us, and just to make the most of this life day by day. That's really all we can do. It's a crazy and chaotic world, but a beautiful one as well if you know where to look.